I grew up in the 90s in the East End of Glasgow, an area of huge poverty. In 2013 I moved to Bristol. My photography started around 2017. I had severe agoraphobia due to postnatal depression and undiagnosed bipolar and ADHD. I was housebound for almost 4 years before accessing therapy. My once-a-week sessions would often be the only time I would leave the house, taking images from the window of my husband's car. I was drawn to the Brittle buildings on our journey. TheArtStory.org says that Brittleism appeared at a time of urgent need for large-scale, affordable residential architecture after the bombing of many European cities, Bristol being one of them. The Royal Institute of British Architects describes Brittlist structures as having rough surfaces, massive forms and shapes, and a powerful expression of structure. I appreciated the harsh lines, repetitions, and feelings of desolation these buildings had. Their stature and rudimentary harshness often mirrored to me how I was feeling on my journeys. On reflection, the grey, lonely buildings also remind me of the work of Bernd and Hilaire Becher. My own work served as documentation, proof that I'd left the home and had gone outside. To me, the images are less art, but almost medical or clinical evidence that my mental health was being treated. Proof and documentation of women's mental health is no new thing. Between the years 1848 to 1858, Hugh Welsh Diamond would take images of mentally ill women who were residents at Surrey County Lunatic Asylum. With such little power, control and independence, depression, anxiety and stress were common amongst women struggling to cope with a static existence under the thumb of strict gender ideals. Diamond described himself as a photographer, as one who catches, in a moment, the permanent cloud, or the passing storm, or sunshine of the soul. His images were used as medical documentation that women were mentally ill. I began taking portraits and photos of models. At the time, it felt creative to be taking images, but on reflection, was I being just as clinical as Diamond, recording my mental state, albeit improved? My images were isolated, sometimes outside, again documentation that I'd left the house, being interactive, and was wow. In November of 2018, my best friend passed away. His passing caused a major depressive episode where I finally diagnosed as bipolar. Each of us has his own rhythm of suffering, wrote Roland Barthes in Camera Lucida, which in short was a book about love and grief, written directly out of the loss of his mother in 1977. My own self-portraits at the time followed the waves of grief, sometimes posed, often not. Again a documentation of my showing up, proof of the days passing by. I became isolated and would take phone images from my bedroom window, looking out to the banal, just to document the same thing each day, proof that the world was still there, even though I felt stuck. When I began taking portraits again, I started feeling lost in my practice, with my images becoming style over substance. In other words, I was doing it for the gram. I investigated my own motivations and the work of other female photographers who take self-portraits. This led me to the work of Cindy Sherman, Nan Goldin, Sophie Calle and Juno Calypso. I was drawn to the raw diaristic nature of Goldin's work. Sherman and Calypso appealed to my natural affinity of aesthetically pleasing imagery, cinematography and plain dress-up. I also noticed that throughout my different bodies of work that I was drawn to the diary format of image taking, the proof that something had happened, the documentation of an event, a memory stored. In the chromatic diary in Double Game, Sophie Calle plays with the idea of identity and ownership with filmmaker Paul Auster, who invents a character for her to own, and she then produces work that she feels his character would make, this time a fake visual diary of daily meals that are more disturbing than tantalising. Documentation of the character that she didn't even make. These influences lead to my latest project, Women at Home. I photographed myself in what could be seen as a window into the life of being a mother, wife and female today. In Kinderkirch, barefoot and pregnant, the style of photography is much darker, grainy, almost an invasive style into the window of a stay-at-home mother looking tired and doing general household tasks, no career, no art, no joy. Morale Liderman Ukeles wrote in her manifesto for maintenance art, "I am an artist, I am a woman, I am a wife, I am a mother, random order. I do a hell of a lot of washing, cleaning, cooking, renewing, supporting, preserving, etc. Also, up to now separately, I do art. Now I will simply do these maintenance, everyday things and flush them up to consciousness, show them as art." Whereas in my project, The Trophy Wife is heavily styled using stereotypical tropes such as the use of pink hair and clothing and posing that's heavily directed for the male gaze. During this set, I wondered, are these even feminist images? Gabrielle Shore in Feminist Avant-Garde Art of the 1970s discusses the issues of women who embrace femininity and feminism. Women who choose a feminine style in their personal life, fashion, makeup, etc., whilst also identifying as feminists, sometimes face criticisms from the more rigid faction of the feminist movement. Artists such as Birgit Jurgensen, who refused to remove attractive parts of female anatomy from her art, instead replacing a male bicep with a female breast, is an example of the feminine we kept in feminine art. In truth, neither of my works is a full exploration of feminism. My own images show shadows and much deeper issues that women face. I found it interesting when posting my images on social media that responses to the more authentic images received a warmer reception. In contrast, the more stylized images were overtly flirtatious and sexual, received misogynistic, abusive comments, and overall received with a more vocal reaction. Much like the work of female artists in the 70s, sexual images were again more scandalous. In Reflections in the Women at Home series, I use a mirror to take my self-portraits. These combine the weary aesthetics of the stay-at-home mum and combine them with posing that is angry, ravaged and primal. This is designed to show that the lines are blurred, the mirror is literal, and that the tropes from the earlier images are stereotypes that are used to suppress the humanity and anger of women. To conclude, in future works, I would like to explore the practice of creating a character, a woman who records her life in a diaristic way, a documentation using the methods of the 70s female artists. Schlur writes, "Rather than obsess over perfect exposures, apertures, or development techniques, they primarily use photography to document the performance of actions. Only modest technology was required. A camera equipped with a self-timer, a tripod, and a movable spotlight was needed. This is a method that interests me greatly. I'd like to thank you for your time in viewing my presentation."